Good morning and welcome to Rising. It is Monday morning and we've got a great show for you today. We're excited to be here, aren't we, Niall?
We are, after thrilling weekends on both our behalves. What could be better than an early Monday morning?
It's still so cold, though. I am ready for winter to be done and over with. I want to get to summer. I want to get in the pool. I want to go running and rollerblading. I want to participate in outdoor activity. I'm sick of the cold.
All these things in good time, Robby.
Yes.
All in good time.
All right, I'm impatient.
But first, what is on your radar?
Happy to tell you, Niall, you're going to like this one. We're all so excited. Oh, joy. MSNBC is axing Joy Reid's show. Now, she has hosted that network's 7 p.m. hour for the past 5 years. Her show, The Readout, is coming to an end this week. That decision was made by Rebecca Cutler, the new president of the network, who has been tasked with rescuing MSNBC's plummeting ratings and dealing with MSNBC's split from NBC. The left-leaning cable channel is currently being split off by its corporate owners, Comcast. Now, the new hosts of the 7 p.m. hour will be Democratic pundit Symone Sanders, former RNC chair Michael Steele, and journalist Alicia Menendez. All three are undoubtedly progressive. While Steele was previously the leader of the Republican Party, that was pre-Trump. In the Trump years, he has become a reliable champion of liberal and anti-Trump causes. I don't know Menendez well. Symone Sanders, on the other hand, is someone I've scrutinized numerous times in the past in terms of her commentary on that network. Now, I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities to criticize them in the future as well, but let's not move on before bidding a fond farewell to Joy Reid, someone who, in my view, evinced so many of the failings of progressive commentary. It should go without saying that she was biased, though in truth, everyone who does the work of being an opinion pundit is in some way biased, so that's not her real problem. The problem is she simply does not understand her enemies, the right, on any level whatsoever. This means her commentary was often wildly off base and pathologically unfair. My favorite Joy Reid quote, by the way, was this one. Education is code for white parents don't like the idea of teaching about race. Dissatisfied with your kid's education? Well, it's probably because you're a racist. Indeed, Joy Reid was obsessed with the idea that everybody she disagreed with was racist or fascist or worse, promoted by Russia. Indeed, Joy Reid was one of the chief enablers, most eager promoters of the Russia collusion hoax, the idea that the Trump campaign worked hand in hand with Russia to steal the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton. Now, that was bad enough, but Joy Reid's commentary became even more unhinged during the pandemic when she served as one of the most pro-mask, pro-lockdown commenters in the country. She shamed people for going to beaches. She tweeted that a picture of people hanging out on a beach in Miami was vile. The beach looked like a disease-ridden petri dish. The picture was actually an old one from 2019, before the pandemic, and her tweet was from March of 2021, a point at which most sane people had determined that, you could safely have fun outside. But nothing tops her most recent election coverage. Before the election, she said not to trust the polls because she thought they were overstating Trump's chances. In fact, she accused Republican-leading pollsters of trying to lay the groundwork for Trump to claim the election was stolen from him once again. Now, we all know how that turned out. Trump won the election and was, if anything, slightly underestimated by the polls. But her post-election coverage was even crazier. She frequently blamed white women, the patriarchy, etc., for failing to vote for Kamala Harris to be president. You know who she refused to blame? Kamala Harris herself. Joy Reid called her campaign flawless. Let's actually watch some of that.
And I think it's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive. You could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time.
Now, despite my joyful demeanor, I am in truth never thrilled when anybody loses their job. It's a very tough thing to have happen to you. I've never met Joy Reid. For all I know, she's a perfectly nice person. But I think that if you really believe as she just said, Kamala Harris's campaign was flawlessly run, and your evidence of how great and successful it was is that even Queen Latifah came out in support of Kamala Harris. I think you're just very deeply out of touch with ordinary people. And that's not even getting into actually the main Joy Reid controversy from several years ago, is that she was accused of authoring these blog posts, if you recall, that were actually deeply homophobic, I think, was the accusation against them. And she said she was hacked and that she never wrote them, but she clearly did write them. That was just a made-up lie. Not that it was the biggest deal ever, but it was weird as a professional journalist to lie about having I think it's clear she lied about authoring the post. But anyway, we don't know that she will be off MSNBC. It's just the show has been canceled. I don't know if she's parting ways with the network. Can't tell. Her staff has been let go. They were very irate finding that out after this news had already leaked to the press. I can certainly understand them being upset. This news did kind of come out of nowhere. I don't think people were expecting an imminent cancellation of her program. So I certainly feel for her staff in that regard.
So let me push back on many of the things you said.
Go for it.
Now, first of all, you mentioned that you'd never met her. I have met her a couple of times, though not for several years. She has always been very pleasant and nice to me. So that is part of it. But also, I think there are about 3 at least different strands to this whole story. Joy Reid should not be immune to criticism, obviously, nor should I, nor should you, nor should anyone. So there are valid criticisms. Then in this case, there is the question of who is making the criticism in the general discourse and why they are making that criticism. I think what we've seen is this social media explosion over this, because she is a polarizing figure, over what is at its root a fairly straightforward ratings decision. When you look at the ratings, more often than not, her total audience is a bit smaller than the show that precedes her, which is Ari Melber's show on MSNBC. If that is the case consistently in any form of linear television, where a lot depends on how you're judged against your lead-in, you're going to be in difficulty one way or another, whether people like you or not. Then there's a separate question, and this is where I think people like myself find ourselves reflexively defensive of Joy Reid whenever we see her being criticised by Megyn Kelly or Marjorie Taylor Greene or President Trump, as happened just a few hours before we're having this conversation. Megyn Kelly described her as the absolute worst person on television. I mean, frankly, Megyn Kelly would be a lot higher up on my list of the worst people on television than Joy Reid would be. Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about, truth in journalism, most famously known for her Jewish space lasers theory. So I think whenever you get those people, then of course there's a natural inclination from people of even a moderately liberal disposition to defend Joy Reid. Now, the other thing is, some of the opposition to her, yes, the homophobic blog post thing was a bad moment for her. I don't think there's any question about that. And yes, there are certain comments, like anyone, including me, who is engaged in on-camera opinionating. There are things that you can object to or that we all put badly. My problem with some of the criticism of Joy Reid is that I think there has always been a strand of white conservatism in this country that hates to be reminded of racism and how frequently it crops up in American life and what a consistent thread it has been in American life. And I think that Joy Reid, as the first female black anchor of a cable news show, was targeted in that way, in a way that even Rachel Maddow or Chris Hayes, who get a fair amount of criticism, are not.
Well, look, I hear you on that, but then I wonder if is she getting more criticism because she does not as good or thorough a job in getting her views out? That, like, Chris Hayes, I disagree with just as strongly. I think the arguments he makes are often more compelling or more substantive or more difficult to dismiss, even when I disagree with him. To some extent, there are often on Twitter I find it to be a little less thorough, whereas Joy Reid is just that's her. And I'm not suggesting that it is never wrong to say that racism is the motivating reason for X, Y, or Z, or that it's never correct, to say that. It seemed like she would turn to that well very frequently. She would draw on it.
Well, I just see a lot online in the 24 hours roughly since we got this news, where things are being framed by people on the right on X and elsewhere as racist, as in her being racist against white people, that I don't read that way at all. I mean, somebody cited that and then played a clip of her basically saying she would vote for any Democrat over Trump. I don't see what is problematic about that. I think that is the opinion of millions and millions of liberals in this country. There's also I guess, an infamous clip very much propagated by the right about her talking about white tears. And what she was actually talking about in the broader context was the Kyle Rittenhouse case and linking him to Brett Kavanaugh as white men who were, as she saw it, sort of performatively regretful about things they had done in the past. In Rittenhouse's case, the crimes of which he was accused and eventually acquitted, and that she felt, with, in my view, some justification, that there is greater leeway permitted to white men for those reactions than there typically is to black women.
What do you think about the replacement hosts who have been ushered in here? To me, that does not actually suggest that they're suddenly pivoting in a less progressive direction. Simone Sanders has very similar criticisms as Joy Reid. Simone Sanders I've criticized in the past for her whole "this is Biden's nomination, he's the president, bow down" kind of myopia about her, I think, on that. Yeah. Michael Steele is a textbook never Trump Republican person who's now indistinguishable from any progressive Democrat, but is ostensibly, this is the kind of diversity of thought that occurs in MSNBC circles. And Alicia Menendez, I barely know at all. But I saw a Axios report this morning that apparently the plan is to remain just as stridently progressive as ever.
Yeah, and I think that is almost certainly going to be the case. I do not detect any change of ideological positioning. I think, MSNBC and Fox both have decided that they're going to preach to the choir constantly. Your point briefly about Simone Sanders and Biden's nomination, one of the criticisms that I would have of her and sometimes of Joy Reid was, even while tonally being kind of leftist, they have tended to be very supportive of the Democratic Party leadership. Back in 2016, I think Joy, who I like personally, was too dismissive of the kind of Bernie Sanders people, but there we go.
I agree with that. Next up on Rising, even Joe Rogan thinks Doge has maybe gone a little too far, but I don't. We'll discuss. Stay tuned.